Welcome back to the Wilderness Protocol. The job posting said, discreet security personnel needed. Vatican City. Night shift. Exceptional pay. Must sign a confidentiality agreement. What it did not say was that I would be watching over creatures that made my skin crawl just by breathing near me. I found out about the real nature of the work 3 months into the job. Father Benedetto pulled me aside after my usual patrol of the empty corridors and handed me a leather folder thick with documents. Tommaso, he said, his weathered hands shaking slightly. You have proven yourself reliable. Tonight, you begin your true duties. The folder contained 5 rules printed on heavy paper. Each one was numbered and written in multiple languages: Italian, Latin, English, and several scripts I could not identify. Father Benedetto made me read them aloud 3 times before he would let me continue. Rule 1. Never look directly at their faces. Keep your eyes on their feet or hands. Rule 2. Always announce yourself before entering any room and wait for acknowledgement. Rule 3. No physical contact under any circumstances. Maintain a minimum distance of 2 meters. Rule 4. Speak only when spoken to. Answer questions with yes or no responses only. Rule 5. Never turn your back on more than one at a time. Count constantly. These rules exist because past guards who broke them did not survive. Father Benedetto explained. The church has an arrangement with certain entities. They meet here once monthly under controlled conditions. Your job is to ensure the facility remains secure and to report any violations of protocol. That first night, I positioned myself outside the main conference hall at exactly midnight. The hallway lights had been dimmed to almost nothing. I carried a small flashlight, a radio, and a notebook to record any incidents. They arrived through the main entrance like any other visitors. I heard their footsteps first. Some walked normally. Others seemed to glide or shuffle. The sound of fabric rustling filled the corridor as they passed my post. I kept my eyes fixed on the marble floor and watched their feet move past me. Some wore expensive leather shoes polished to a mirror shine. Others had bare feet with long toenails that clicked against the stone. A few wore what looked like ancient sandals bound with strips of dark fabric. One pair of feet appeared to be covered in fine scales that caught the dim light. Good evening, I said to each group as they passed. Following Rule 4. Most did not respond. A few murmured replies in languages I did not recognize. The meeting lasted exactly 4 hours. I spent the time walking patrol routes through the adjacent hallways, making sure no unauthorized persons entered the area. Twice, I encountered individual attendees in the corridors. Both times, I announced myself clearly and waited for their acknowledgement before proceeding. The first was standing near a window, looking out at the gardens. When I called out my presence, it turned slightly in my direction. I kept my gaze on its feet, which were bare with what appeared to be additional toes. Security patrol, it said in accented English. Noted. I continued my route. The second encounter happened near the restrooms. I announced myself and heard a voice respond from inside one of the stalls. Acknowledged. Guard. The voice sounded like 2 people speaking in unison, but I followed the rules and did not investigate further. At 4 o'clock in the morning, they began leaving. I maintained my position and watched their feet pass by again. The group with the scaled feet paused near my post. You follow instructions well, one of them said. The voice came from somewhere above my head, but I kept staring at those scaled feet. Father Benedetto chose wisely. Thank you, I replied, remembering to keep my responses short. After the last footsteps faded, Father Benedetto appeared with a cup of strong coffee and asked for my report. I described the 2 corridor encounters and the brief conversation with the scaled feet individual. Excellent work, Tommaso, You will do this again next month. Over the following months, I learned to recognize some of the regular attendees by their footwear and walking patterns. The expensive leather shoes belonged to someone who always arrived first and left last. The clicking toenails moved with quick, nervous steps. The scaled feet individual seemed to be some kind of leader. Others would pause near it during the corridor breaks. I also learned that the building itself changed slightly during these events. Doors that were usually locked stood open. Temperature fluctuations caused condensation to form on windows and walls. The elevator would sometimes activate on its own, traveling between floors with no passengers visible. Most importantly, I learned that the rules were not suggestions. During my 4th month, a new guard named Salvatore was assigned to assist me. Father Benedetto gave him the same folder and made him read the rules aloud. Salvatore seemed confident, almost dismissive. These are just wealthy people playing dress-up games. He told me during our pre-shift briefing. Rich folks love their secret societies and dramatic ceremonies. His attitude changed during the first patrol, when we encountered one of the attendees near the water fountain. Salvatore forgot to announce himself properly. He simply walked up and tried to ask if everything was acceptable. The attendee turned toward him, and I saw Salvatore take a step backward. His face went completely white, and he started stammering apologies. I quickly announced both of our presences and requested permission to continue our patrol. Granted, the attendee replied, turning back to the fountain. Train your partner better. Salvatore barely spoke for the rest of the shift. When Father Benedetto asked for a report, Salvatore requested a transfer to day duties. His request was approved immediately. What did you see? I asked him as he gathered his belongings. Rules exist for good reasons, was all he would say. After that night, I worked alone again. The isolation did not bother me. I developed a routine that kept me focused and alert. Count the attendees as they arrived. Monitor the corridor temperature with a small thermometer. Check each room twice per hour, always announcing myself first, and keep detailed notes about any unusual activities or requests. The monthly meetings followed the same pattern. Arrival at midnight, a 4-hour duration, and departure by dawn. The attendees seemed to appreciate consistency and professionalism. Several times, individuals would nod in my direction or offer brief words of acknowledgement when I announced myself during patrols. I began to understand that this arrangement served an important purpose for both sides. The church provided a secure, neutral location for discussions or negotiations. The attendees received privacy and protection from outside interference. My role was to maintain the boundary between their business and the normal operations of the Vatican. During my 8th month, something changed in the routine. Father Benedetto called me to his office 3 days before the scheduled meeting. Tommaso, next week will be different, he said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. There will be additional attendees. The meeting may run longer than usual. Most importantly, there may be visitors who are not part of the regular arrangement. He handed me a second set of rules printed on the same heavy paper but with different instructions. Special protocol rules. If anyone asks you to deliver a message, refuse politely and direct them to Father Benedetto. If you observe any physical altercations, immediately radio for backup, but do not intervene directly. If anyone offers you gifts or payment, decline and report the incident. If electrical systems malfunction, use manual backup lighting only. If you smell sulfur or burning metal, evacuate the building immediately and call the emergency number. These protocols exist because territorial disputes sometimes arise. Father Benedetto explained. Different groups have different interests. Usually, they negotiate peacefully. Sometimes they do not. The night of the special meeting arrived with a thunderstorm. Heavy rain hammered the windows, and lightning illuminated the corridors in brief, stark flashes. I arrived early to check all the emergency equipment and backup systems. The first group arrived 30 minutes before midnight. Earlier than usual. I recognized the expensive leather shoes and announced myself as they passed. Instead of proceeding directly to the conference hall, they paused near my post. "Guard," the leather shoes individual said. "Tonight may present challenges. Maintain your protocols regardless of what you observe." "Understood," I replied, keeping my eyes on those polished shoes. The second group arrived exactly at midnight. These were attendees I had never seen before. Their footwear was completely different. Thick-soled boots that seemed to absorb sound rather than create it. They moved with military precision, each step deliberate and measured. As they passed my post, one of them stopped. I announced myself and waited. "You are the regular guard," the individual said. The voice was completely flat, without accent or emotion. "You will observe neutrality tonight." "Yes," I replied. The third group arrived 15 minutes late, which broke the usual pattern of punctuality. I heard them arguing in the entrance hallway before they reached my position. Their footsteps were erratic, some quick and others dragging. When they passed me, I noticed several individuals were barefoot despite the cold weather. Security presence noted. One called out without me having to announce myself first. "Stay clear of the eastern corridor tonight." The meeting began with raised voices immediately. Usually, the discussions were conducted in quiet tones that barely carried through the heavy doors. Tonight, I could hear distinct words and phrases in multiple languages. The tone suggested disagreement, possibly heated negotiation. 1 hour into the meeting, the lights flickered. I checked my equipment and noted the time in my logbook. The electrical disturbance lasted for exactly 30 seconds. Then normal power resumed. 2 hours in, I heard footsteps in the eastern corridor despite the warning to stay clear. Following protocol, I announced myself from the main hallway intersection. "Security patrol requesting permission to proceed." "Denied," came a reply from somewhere in the distance. "Maintain current position." I stayed at the intersection and noted the incident. The footsteps continued for another 20 minutes, accompanied by sounds I could not identify: scraping, tapping, and what might have been furniture being moved. 3 hours into the meeting, my radio crackled with static. I tried to contact Father Benedetto but received no response. The backup communication system also showed interference. I noted the equipment failure and continued my patrol using the predetermined routes. 4:30 in the morning. 30 minutes past the usual ending time. The conference hall doors opened. The attendees began leaving, but not in the organized manner I had observed before. The expensive leather shoes individual emerged first, moving quickly toward the exit. "Guard," it said as it passed. "Document tonight as a Code 7 incident. Father Benedetto will understand." The military boots group left next, maintaining their precise formation. They did not acknowledge me, but I announced myself anyway as they passed my position. The third group took another hour to leave. When they finally emerged, several individuals appeared to be supporting others who were having difficulty walking. I kept my eyes on their feet and noted that some were limping or moving irregularly. "Successful evening," one of them said as the group passed. The tone suggested the opposite. After the building was empty, I completed my final patrol and documented everything in detail. Code 7 incident. Electrical disturbances. Extended duration. Communication equipment failure. Eastern corridor activity. Irregular departure patterns. Father Benedetto arrived at dawn with coffee and fresh pastries. He read my report twice before speaking. "You performed excellently under difficult circumstances." He said, "The arrangement will continue, but there may be changes to the security protocols." "What is a Code 7 incident?" I asked. "A disagreement that was resolved without permanent damage to the facility or participants. Your neutrality helped prevent escalation." Over the next several months, the meetings returned to their normal routine. The special attendees did not return, and the regular groups resumed their predictable patterns. Father Benedetto never mentioned the Code 7 incident again, but he did increase my compensation significantly. I learned to appreciate the strange reliability of this work. The rules were clear, the expectations consistent, and the pay was exceptional. Most security jobs involve unpredictable human behavior and complex social dynamics. This position eliminated those variables through strict protocols. The attendees seemed to respect professionalism and consistency above all else. As long as I followed the rules exactly and maintained appropriate boundaries, they treated me with courtesy and even a form of appreciation. On my 1-year anniversary, the expensive leather shoes individual paused at my post after a meeting. "You have served well," it said. "The arrangement benefits from your reliability." "Thank you," I replied, watching those perfectly polished shoes. "Father Benedetto speaks highly of your character. Such qualities are rare." I continued to focus on the leather shoes, noting how they reflected the dim hallway lighting. "I appreciate the work." "Good. Consistency serves everyone's interests." After that conversation, I received a formal commendation from the Vatican Security Department and another significant pay increase. Father Benedetto explained that feedback from the attendees had been overwhelmingly positive regarding my performance. "They value dependability," he said. "Many of their other business relationships lack that quality." As my second year began, I realized that this position had taught me something important about fear and respect. The rules existed not just to protect me, but to create a framework for interaction between vastly different groups. Following protocol allowed everyone to coexist peacefully within defined boundaries. The monthly meetings continued without major incidents. I maintained my routines, documented everything meticulously, and treated each attendee with the same professional courtesy. The work was strange, certainly, but it was also straightforward in a way that most jobs never achieve. Everything changed during the February meeting of my second year. I should have recognized the signs earlier, but routine had made me complacent. The first indication came 3 days before the scheduled event. Father Benedetto called me to his office, but this time he was not alone. A woman sat across from his desk, wearing the black suit of the Vatican administrative staff. She introduced herself as Sister Margherita from the Special Events Coordination Department. "Tommaso, we need to discuss an important development." Father Benedetto began. "The February meeting will include a new participant, someone who has requested specific accommodations." Sister Margherita opened a manila folder and removed several documents. "The individual in question has agreed to follow all existing protocols, but has requested permission to arrive 1 hour early for a private consultation with Father Benedetto. Will this affect my duties?" I asked. "You will be required to escort this individual from the main entrance to Father Benedetto's office. Then return them to the conference area," Sister Margherita explained. "Standard protocols apply, with one addition." She handed me a laminated card with a 6th rule printed in the same style as the others. Special Rule 6. If the early attendee asks you any questions about your personal life, family, or background, respond only with information not available. This individual has a tendency to gather personal information about staff members, Father Benedetto explained. The Church prefers to maintain strict privacy boundaries in such cases. The night of the February meeting, I arrived 2 hours early to prepare for the modified schedule. At 11 p.m., I positioned myself at the main entrance and waited. The early attendee arrived exactly on time. I heard the heavy front doors open and close, followed by the sound of footsteps on marble. As the individual approached my position, I announced myself according to protocol. Security escort. Ready to proceed to Father Benedetto's office. Excellent, came the reply. The voice was pleasant, almost cheerful. I appreciate punctuality in all its forms. I kept my eyes focused on the individual's feet as we walked through the corridors. The footwear was distinctive. Expensive-looking boots made from some kind of exotic leather with intricate metalwork on the buckles and straps. The boots made no sound against the marble floor despite their apparent weight. You have worked here for quite some time, the individual said as we turned toward the administrative wing. Information not available, I replied, following the special protocol. Ah, they briefed you. Well, how refreshing to encounter proper preparation. We continued in silence until we reached Father Benedetto's office. I knocked 3 times and announced our arrival. Enter. Father Benedetto called from inside. I opened the door and stepped aside to allow the attendee to enter first. Will you require an escort back to the conference area? I asked. I will call you when needed. Father Benedetto replied. Please continue your normal duties until then. I returned to my regular patrol routes and waited. The other attendees began arriving at their usual time, and I processed them according to standard protocols. Everything seemed normal except for an unusual amount of electrical activity. Lights flickered more frequently than during the Code 7 incident, and my radio produced constant static. At 12:30 a.m., Father Benedetto called my radio. Tommaso, please return to my office for escort duties. When I arrived, Father Benedetto looked tired and was pouring himself a large glass of wine. The early attendee stood near the window, still wearing those distinctive boots, ready for escort to the conference area. I announced. Actually, the individual said, turning slightly in my direction. I have a proposal that might interest you. I kept my eyes on those elaborate boots and waited for Father Benedetto to respond. Tommaso, this individual would like to offer you alternative employment. Father Benedetto said carefully. I have explained that you are under contract with the church, but they insisted on making the offer directly. The boots moved closer to my position. Your reputation for reliability has reached certain circles. There are opportunities available that would triple your current compensation. I looked at Father Benedetto, who nodded slightly. I am satisfied with my current position. I replied. Of course, you are. Loyalty is an admirable quality. However, consider the limitations of working for an institution bound by so many rules and traditions. The boots turned toward the window again. In other arrangements, security personnel are given far more autonomy and responsibility. The work is more interesting, and the benefits are more substantial. Thank you for the offer, but I decline. I said, no pressure whatsoever. The offer remains open should your circumstances change. I escorted the individual to the conference area without further conversation. The meeting proceeded normally for the next 3 hours, with only minor electrical disturbances and no corridor incidents. At 4 a.m., as the attendees began departing, the early arrival individual paused at my post one final time. Before I leave, may I ask why you declined my offer? Those distinctive boots stopped directly in front of me. I kept my eyes down and considered my response carefully. This work suits me. Interesting. Most people would choose better pay and more freedom. Rules create stability. I prefer stability. The boots shifted slightly. You understand something that many do not. Structure serves a purpose beyond mere control. Yes. Father Benedetto chose his security personnel wisely. "Good evening, Tommaso." After the building was empty, Father Benedetto appeared with coffee and asked for my report. I described the alternative employment offer and my response. "You handled that perfectly," he said. "Such offers are not uncommon in this work. The church appreciates your loyalty." "What kind of work would they have offered?" I asked. "Security for less regulated gatherings. Higher pay, but far more dangerous conditions. The rules that govern our meetings exist for good reasons." "I understand." "Good. There will be additional compensation in your next paycheck as a token of appreciation." The following months returned to a normal routine, but I noticed subtle changes in how the regular attendees interacted with me. Several individuals who had never spoken before began offering brief acknowledgments when I announced myself during patrols. The expensive leather shoes individual, whom I had come to think of as the group leader, stopped at my post after the April meeting. "Your refusal of outside employment was noted with approval," it said. "Reliability includes resistance to compromise." "Thank you," I replied. "The arrangement here serves multiple purposes. Your role maintains a necessary balance." "I understand." "Good. Continuity benefits everyone involved." During my third year, I began to understand the broader implications of this work. The monthly meetings were not just business discussions but a form of diplomatic relationship between different groups with competing interests. The Vatican provided neutral ground where agreements could be negotiated without the usual territorial complications. My role was more significant than simple security. By maintaining strict neutrality and following protocols exactly, I helped create an environment where these negotiations could proceed peacefully. The rules protected everyone involved and prevented the kinds of incidents that could disrupt the arrangement entirely. This realization came during a conversation with Father Benedetto after a particularly complex meeting involving 5 different groups instead of the usual 3. "Tommaso, do you understand why this arrangement exists?" he asked over our post-meeting coffee. "To provide a neutral meeting space for groups that might otherwise have conflicts." I replied, "Exactly. But more than that. It prevents those conflicts from spilling over into areas where innocent people could be harmed." He showed me a map of Vatican City with several areas marked in red. These meetings keep certain activities contained within controlled boundaries. Without this arrangement, we might see incidents in public spaces or private residences. The rules protect more than just the attendees. I said, "Much more. Your professionalism helps maintain peace on a scale you might not have imagined." This perspective made the work feel more meaningful. I was not just following security protocols but contributing to a system that prevented larger problems. The strange nature of the attendees became less important than the function they served in maintaining stability. As my 4th year approached, Father Benedetto informed me that the church was considering expanding the program to include quarterly meetings in addition to the monthly gatherings. "Your success here has demonstrated that such arrangements can work long-term," he explained. "Other dioceses have expressed interest in implementing similar programs." "Would I be involved in training other security personnel?" I asked. "Possibly. Your experience and understanding of the protocols would be valuable in establishing new sites." The possibility of expanding the program excited me. The work had taught me skills and perspectives that would be difficult to develop in conventional security positions. Training others to maintain the same standards and professionalism would be rewarding. During the final month of my 4th year, an incident occurred that tested everything I had learned about following protocols under pressure. The meeting was proceeding normally when, at 2 a.m., I heard breaking glass from the conference area. I immediately radioed Father Benedetto but received no response. Following emergency protocols, I approached the conference hall and announced myself. "Security responding to a disturbance." requesting a status update. Acknowledged. Came multiple voices from inside the hall. Minor accident. No assistance required. I noted the incident and continued my patrol. 20 minutes later, I encountered one of the attendees in the eastern corridor. The individual was examining what appeared to be a small cut on their hand. Security patrol. I announced. Yes, I require access to medical supplies. The individual replied. Following protocol. I escorted them to the first aid station and provided basic bandages and antiseptic. I kept my eyes focused on their feet throughout the process and maintained the appropriate distance. Thank you for your assistance, they said after treating the minor wound. You are welcome. Do you require additional medical attention? No. This is sufficient. I escorted them back to the conference area and documented the incident. When Father Benedetto arrived for the post-meeting debrief, he reviewed my report with particular attention. You handled the medical situation correctly, he said. Providing basic first aid falls within your duties. But anything more serious would require calling outside medical personnel. I understand. Should I modify my patrol routes to check for additional hazards? No. The incident was truly minor. These gatherings occasionally involve discussions that become somewhat heated. But serious injuries are extremely rare. Good to know. Your response demonstrated exactly the kind of measured professionalism we need in this position. Well done. As I completed my 4th year in the position, I realized that this work had become more than just a job. The monthly routine provided a structure and purpose that I valued highly. The attendees had become familiar, and I took pride in providing them with consistent, reliable service. More importantly, I understood that I was part of something larger than individual security work. The arrangement between the church and these groups served important functions for maintaining stability and preventing conflicts that could affect many people. Father Benedetto called me to his office during the first week of my 5th year for an annual performance review. Tommaso, your service has been exemplary in every respect. He began. The attendees have consistently praised your professionalism, and you have never had a serious protocol violation. Thank you. I find the work rewarding. The church would like to offer you a permanent position with increased responsibilities and compensation. You would become the senior security coordinator for all special events, including the quarterly meetings we are planning to implement. The offer included a significant salary increase, better benefits, and the opportunity to train other security personnel for similar programs. It also meant I would be working directly with church administrators to develop new protocols and procedures. I accept, I said without hesitation. Excellent. Your first assignment will be to draft training materials for new security staff. Use your experience to create guidelines that will help others succeed in this type of work. Over the following weeks, I worked on developing comprehensive training materials that covered not just the specific rules and protocols but also the underlying principles that made them effective. I emphasized the importance of consistency, neutrality, and respect for all participants. The training program I created included practical exercises, scenario-based discussions, and detailed explanations of why each rule existed. I wanted new security staff to understand not just what to do, but why their actions mattered for maintaining the broader arrangement. When the first group of new trainees completed the program, Father Benedetto asked me to personally oversee their initial assignments at other Vatican events. Watching them successfully apply the protocols I had taught them was deeply satisfying. You have become an excellent teacher, Father Benedetto observed after the 3rd successful training session. The principles you developed are being implemented in 3 other locations now. The work teaches important lessons about professionalism and respect. I replied, I am glad to share what I have learned. As my 5th year in the position concluded, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. What had started as an unusual security job had evolved into meaningful work that contributed to maintaining peace and stability for multiple communities. The monthly meetings continued with their familiar rhythm. The attendees maintained their patterns and preferences, and I provided the same reliable service I had delivered from the beginning. But now I also knew that this work represented something larger, a successful model for managing complex relationships between different groups with competing interests. During the December meeting of my 5th year, the expensive leather shoes individual made an unexpected request. Instead of proceeding directly to the conference hall, they paused at my post. "Guard, I have been authorized to share information that may interest you," they said. I kept my eyes on those polished shoes and waited. The arrangement here has become a model for similar programs in 12 cities across Europe and North America. Your professionalism contributed significantly to that success. "Thank you," I replied. "More than that, the protocols you helped develop are now being used to facilitate negotiations between groups that had been in active conflict for decades." I felt a surge of pride but maintained my professional demeanor. "I am honored to have contributed. You should be. Your work here has prevented more violence and suffering than you might imagine." After the individual proceeded to the conference hall, I stood in the dimmed corridor and reflected on this revelation. The strange work I had stumbled into 5 years ago had apparently helped create a system for preventing conflicts and maintaining peace across multiple continents. When Father Benedetto arrived for our post-meeting coffee, I told him about the conversation. "It is true," he confirmed. "The success of our program here demonstrated that such arrangements could work reliably. Church officials around the world have implemented similar systems, and the results have exceeded our expectations." "How many people have been affected?" I asked. "Difficult to quantify precisely, but the conflicts that have been avoided or resolved through these neutral meeting programs likely would have displaced thousands of families and caused immeasurable suffering." I sat quietly for a moment, processing this information. My simple adherence to security protocols had somehow contributed to a global peacekeeping initiative. "You should feel proud of what you have accomplished," Father Benedetto continued. "Your reliability and professionalism created the foundation for something truly significant." "I just followed the rules," I said. "Exactly. And in doing so, you proved that respect, consistency, and neutrality could bridge differences between groups that seemed impossible to reconcile." As I prepared to leave the Vatican that morning, I realized that I had found something rare in modern work, a position that combined personal satisfaction with a meaningful contribution to something larger than myself. The 5 rules that had initially seemed strange and arbitrary had taught me profound lessons about respect, professionalism, and the power of consistent behavior. Following them had not only kept me safe but had helped create a model for peaceful coexistence that was now being used around the world. I walked home through the quiet streets of Rome as dawn broke over the ancient city, feeling grateful for the unexpected path that had led me to this meaningful work. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but the foundation of principles I had learned would continue to guide me. The strange becomes familiar when approached with respect and consistency. Fear transforms into understanding when governed by clear protocols and mutual respect. And sometimes, the most important work happens in the quiet spaces between different worlds, maintained by people willing to follow simple rules that serve purposes far greater than they initially appear. My name is Tommaso Alberti, and I work security for events that most people would never believe exist. But I know they do, and I know that the work matters. The rules exist for good reasons, and following them has taught me more about professionalism, respect, and the possibility of peace than any other job ever could. The arrangement continues. The meetings proceed smoothly, and the system we have built together continues to prevent conflicts and facilitate understanding between groups that might otherwise never find common ground. That is enough purpose for any career. Thank you for listening to this entry from the Wilderness Protocol. If you made it through this report and wish to be briefed on future incidents, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel.